The pen split along the clip, and a thin black line jumped across the paper as Leela pressed the last curve of her name. Fear sat behind her ribs like a small animal. It made her fingers cold and precise. Around her, the study smelled of old leather, and the faint trace of Zain Saud, sign here, Zain without looking down. And his voice steadied the room more than the lamp did. Leela felt the truth of the contract in the weight of the paper. She had counted the figures 3 times that morning. The lender's deadline had been Sunday morning. Her sister's landlord had already sent a final message. She had walked through the villa's tiled corridor with her heart pounding, and a satchel that held the last of her proof of residency and her sister's passport. Fear moved her. Her sister would lose their house if she refused. That fear made her slide the pen across ink. She kept her head level. The salt, sour smell of the sea reached the study window, and the private island's lights were a dark margin on the horizon. Leela's hand trembled when she set the pen down. Leela, Zain again, gently, as if he were reminding her of a small fact. This confirms your consent. You understand the terms. I understand, she answered. Her voice held the steady warmth she used for contracts and creditors. Saying her acceptance aloud made the exchange feel factual, not personal. That was the point, she thought. Make it a fact, keep feelings out. But when Zain's eyes met hers, something in them slackened for a fraction of a breath, and she saw a man who had learned how to hold back storms. Amira's face appeared on the tablet screen at the edge of the desk. The lawyer's brow was lit by her laptop, the office behind her clean and vertical. Leila, stop for a second. Amira. She tapped the screen. Listen to me. Read clause 7 out loud. Leela pulled the tablet closer and scanned the clause. Her mouth went dry. The penalties were precise. If she left or defied the terms before the 2-year mark, she would owe a payment calculated against the family's trust. There were exit fees, public obligations, and a confidentiality clause that made any public complaint dangerous. Amira's voice narrowed into efficiency. Amira, this is, Leila started, a legal trap if you let it be. Amira finished. Leila, I negotiated what I could. But your choices here are limited. You for safety for Nadia. This is how it comes. You promised them you de-sign. Leela swallowed and looked at Zain. He did not look ashamed. He folded his hands and watched the tablet with a patient, neutral face. We will honor what I agreed to in full, he said. Your family will have immediate protection. Any claim against them will go through our counsel. His voice carried the corporate promise of a man used to clean solutions. The contract's teeth were visible now. The fear in Leila loosened into a sharper suspicion. She had come to this villa knowing she traded privacy for security, but she had not expected the clauses that would bind her life. Outside, wind rose against the villa. The staff had drawn the shutters as the first gusts hit the private wing. A sound like heavy fabric snapping reached them through the study door. Zain glanced toward the window and his jaw tightened. Storms this far out are rare in December, he said. A minute later the lights dipped for a breath and the doorbell stuttered, then went off. Leela stood because standing felt necessary. Her hands folded automatically. She did not yet trust herself to speak without giving away how small she felt. Stay by the desk, Amira on the call. Don't let them move you from any agreements. I will stay online until morning. That statement, practical, blunt, made Leela feel less exposed. She moved her satchel closer, fingers brushing the thin gold chain at her throat. Zain watched her do it. He did not offer words. He let the room hold noise and then broke it. If anyone comes to the gate, tell them to leave, he said. No one will enter without my permission. Leela nodded. His control felt like a tool and like a wall in alternating measures. The storm came in walls of sand and sudden rain. The villa's smart gate powered down as a transformer blew somewhere across the island. The security line went dead, and the backup generator hummed uncertainly before catching and settling into a low, steady sound. Phones blinked static. Amira's face flickered on the tablet and then steadied in a protective loop. Outside, servants moved to secure doors and an expensive lamp clattered in the hallway when a gust shoved it. Isolation arrived uninvited. The villa's main entrance was sealed under the staff's instructions, and then the storm severed the lane back to the mainland. Leela watched the sliding glass doors pull closed over the veranda and felt the shift. The arrangement she had signed stood now as a fact between two people trapped together by weather and circumstance. They walked out onto the veranda to find a narrow strip of sky between black clouds and sea light. Zane kept his hands in his pockets. Rain stung Layla's face when it hit the rim light. It tasted of salt and desert dust. He moved as if the storm were a private thing that he could manage with a single cool decision. You should not be out here. Zane, I needed air, Layla. Her words came short, and I needed to see that this wasn't a trick. Her voice sounded thinner than she felt. He watched her shoulder blades tense beneath her tailored blazer. Then he made the choice of private disclosure. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. I did not bring you here to hurt you, he said. There is a reason I arranged this, Leela replied with an action. She folded her arms and kept her chin level. Her fingers bunched in the sleeve. The reason written on the contract is public. The real reason will matter if you break that contract, her tone sharpened. She would not be the naive woman others expected. Zane inhaled slowly and then said, There is a man named Farouk. He has evidence he could sell. Evidence that would cost my family everything. I needed a controlled solution. A union would put the matter behind us on paper. Amira's voice on the tablet grew quieter but present. A legal thread between them. Leela, are you listening? You must judge risk. If Farouk has leverage, you could be targeted. I can file protections immediately, but I need a list of his demands. Leela's suspicion shifted to a different strain of fear. The kind that sits at the back of one's throat and tastes like betrayal. She watched Zane's jaw and the small scar near his cheekbone as he described the blackmail. He did not sound triumphant. He sounded tired. Why me, Layla? Why need my name for this? Zane paused. He rubbed his thumb along a signet ring, a mannerism she had noticed in the study. Because he knew I would pick someone whose life could be legally tied to mine without causing suspicion. He wanted leverage over the family, not one woman. Silence fell between them like a physical thing. Layla felt a new motion inside her, an odd, reluctant alignment. The fear that had driven her to sign softened into a guarded curiosity. She tested it with one sentence. If protecting us is your motive, then act like it. He met her eyes. I will, he said, if you let me. They retreated inside when a servant shouted from the corridor, Sister. A woman's voice called, ragged and panicked. Layla's stomach dropped. The name was Nadia. The staff parted and Nadia lunged into the foyer, breathless, eyes wild, a damp scarf trailing behind her. She looked smaller than Leela remembered. Nadia! Leela moved to her and took her in both hands. Nadia's cheekbone had a bruise forming, and she kept glancing toward the gate. What happened? Who followed you? Nadia's voice was thin. If I didn't bring the money now, they descend the papers. They came here. They came to the address. A man's boot cut the air in the doorway. A tall figure stood framed in the glass, rain beading on his shoulders. He carried himself like someone who expected friction. A debt collector, Leela recognized, not from formal business, but from the way his eyes measured nuisance and potential. He had a ledger and a phone, and his grin was thin when he saw Zane. Miss All, Said, the man said, loud enough that the staff stopped moving. We have business. Immediate payment. Amira's voice on the tablet went sharp. Layla, move Nadia away from the door. Keep your sister behind you. Stay calm. Zane stepped forward. He did not shout. He did not brandish money. He crossed the foyer and stood between Nadia and the man. His posture was that of someone used to calculating risk. This is private property, he said. You will leave. If you do not, the authorities will be involved. Authorities aren't answering their phones, the man said. He smiled like someone showing his teeth. We collect now or we take action. Take action where? Zane's voice was low. He did not move his hands. "You will leave or I will have you removed." The man answered with a different tactic. He leaned in and named a figure from Zane's rumor sphere. Al-Mansouri's name means leverage. "You think you'll scare me with that suit? Your family has enemies. I'll be the one who exposes them for a price." Zane's face hardened. He took the decision that made the air in the foyer feel like a staged performance. He moved with controlled speed and gripped the man's wrist. He did not strike. He held the man's wrist as if it were a lever. "You leave now, Zane, or I call for immediate removal." There was a sharp exchange of words. The man hissed and spat threats about exposure. Nadia sobbed quietly. Leela's fingers tightened on the strap of her satchel. She felt an emotion shift from cautious hope to a piercing anger when someone threatened the people she loved. "Zane," she said, stepping forward. Her voice carried her name, as if that would anchor her in the scene. "Don't make this more public than it already is. He wants us to react. He wants headlines." Zane turned to her. "Then dThe, let him force that hand," he said. "Stay behind me." The collector made one last move. A shove toward Nadia that clipped her shoulder. Zane's hand tightened until the man's jaw whitened. Then Zane let go and pushed him back. The exchange lasted seconds but changed everything between them. Leela noticed how his fingers remained clenched afterwards, and how the stubble at his jaw had a smear of sand. "You can do this," the collector said. "You don't have the authority to hold me. I have authority here." Zane leave, a beat of silence. Then the man's face twisted into something practical. He backed away, muttering about contacts and small revenge. He left with a warning glance toward Nadia. The staff slammed the door shut. No one thanked Zane. No one needed to. Leela felt gratitude the way she felt a heat under the skin, immediate and physical. She stepped closer to him in the foyer, where the rain left marks on the tile. "Thank you," she said plainly. Zane did not look pleased. He looked tired. "I protected what needed protecting," he said. "This is why I wanted a controlled arrangement." Amira's voice broke into the room again. More composed now than earlier. "Leela, we have to document everything. You must tell me names, times, threats. I'll file an emergency notice." Nadia clung to Leela and kept repeating fragments. Men at the gate, a woman's heel on the stair, papers folded in a small envelope. Leela's chest tightened. She thought of the rent, the market prices, the months of calls she had ignored because she had believed she could manage. Now those months had pushed her into a choice with a man whose name filled headlines. They moved to the sunken sitting area by the pool. The room smelled of wet stone and lemon oil. Leela sat and let her palms crumple a tissue. Zane stayed standing by the floor lamp, the lamplight riming his shoulders in warm gold against the teal beyond the glass. He blinked slowly, and for the first time since the signing, his measured pauses filled the room with something like thoughtfulness. "Leela," he said, stepping toward the coffee table, "tell me everything you know about Farouk." Names, places, who he contacted. We'll construct protection. She him the concrete details she had. A number, an address, the man's pattern of approaching vulnerable tenants. She spoke in short sentences. She Nadia's landlord's name and the bank branch they'd been dealing with. Every item she gave was a tool for Amira's legal work. Amira took notes out loud. "I'll file a restraining notice and a formal complaint," she said. "I will also request immediate protection through our contacts." "Leila, you did the right thing by coming here." Leela's reaction was not relief. It was a complex tilt of obligation. She had chosen how to act. She had signed the paper. She had placed her sister under the wing of a household whose head had nothing to do with kindness. Now the community of people in the villa took actions that created a new frame for her life. Outside, the storm thinned into a steady rain that rang against the terrace. The overnight security traced a new perimeter, and staff moved with the quiet urgency of those who knew how to prepare for headlines. The morning light, when it came, would show sand tracks and a smeared driveway. But for now there was only the sound of a generator, and the thin tapping of rain. Zan sat across from Leela. He set his travel watch on the table and watched her hands as she folded and refolded a napkin without looking away. "You don't need to pretend this is comfortable," he said. "I am aware of the cost." Leela met his glance. Her voice was small. "I didn't come here for comfort. I came here because there was nowhere else for my sister." He nodded. "Then we will protect her." The phrase could have been corporate assurance. Instead, Zane bent his head, and in that motion Leila saw fatigue and a kind of personal investment that had not been present in the contract. She tested the new feeling by speaking plainly. "If you protect us, you must accept that it will change the arrangement." He paused and rubbed his thumb along the signet ring. "I am prepared to accept that." Outside, a car's engine rasped down the private lane. The sound was distant, then closer. Leila looked up. The collection of events that had tightened across the night found a new knot. A black SUV slowed at the villa gate, and its headlights cut bright lines through the rain. They made everyone in the room hold their breath. Amira's voice on the tablet went sharp. "Who is arriving now?" she demanded. A staff member crossed to the window and whispered a name. Leela heard it like a small blade, a contact from Farooq, or a new messenger, or a representative. The house held its breath as the driver pressed the intercom. The panel flashed a request to open. Zane stood up. He walked to the monitor and stared at the visitor. He had the choice to deny them or to invite them into the light of the foyer. He reached for the intercom and with a measured hand pressed the button. "Who is it?" he asked. A woman's voice returned, calm and manufactured. "I am here to deliver a message, Mr. Al-Mansouri." Lila's body tightened. This was not over. The shift from fear to wary hope, and then to protective alarm, had happened within hours. She had moved from signing a contract to standing behind her sister under the roof of a man who had chosen to act on their behalf. The rain hammered a steady rhythm on the roof as the intercom crackled. Zane's face hardened into a decision. He opened the door. The chapter ends with the foyer light widening and a woman in a dark coat stepping inside, holding an envelope she would not let go of, and the villa's staff closing the door behind her. The courier pressed the envelope into Leila's palms and left before she could fold her fingers around the heavy paper. Fear sat behind her ribs, sharp, immediate, and she kept her jaw clenched while Amira peeled open the wax seal. The notice read that Leila's family home faced auction in 48 hours. Leila swallowed and felt her hands go cold. She carried the signed contract in her bag like an accusation she had already made. Leila did not speak for a breath. She folded the notice once, then spread it flat on the marble console and read the deadline aloud, because words made danger easier to measure. 48 hours, she said. "They can auction the house in 2 days if we don't pay." Amira did not look surprised. She set her tablet down, thumbed through emails, and named names linked to the account levy. This came from a registered courier, Leila. "It has the firm's stamp. We need to move now." Rashid, who had been standing by the entrance, checking the perimeter, stepped forward and put the courier's receipt on the table. Fear shifted to practical calculation. Leila's lips pressed thin. She reached for her phone and scrolled through a list of transfers that would not stretch to the amount demanded. She had signed away much of what mattered to keep her sister's rent paid and the electricity running. The contract with Zane had been a last exact choice. She had written her name in a study that smelled like oud and old leather only days ago. She remembered the pen splitting as it caught on a fold of paper and the flatness in Zane's voice when he said, "Sign here." That memory arrived as a precise detail, and now the new paper lived beside it, a second signature-shaped trap. Amira tapped the notice with a measured finger. "This isn't a normal creditor," she said. "The paperwork is staged. See these account numbers? They lead to shell entities with no real assets." Leila tightened her grip on the envelope. "Who would do that?" she asked. "Someone who wants a reaction," Amira answered. Someone on your husband's board or someone who wants your reactions made public. Leela Zain's name like a test. Amira met her eyes. We check that. We freeze everything we can. But right now the clock starts. Rashid pointed to the Villas security feed mounted near the study door and said, I will check the gates and the marina. If anyone moves, I'll notify you immediately. They left the terrace together. The morning light had not yet broken fully over the private island, but workers were preparing the gala pavilions on the far side, and a faint engine hum came from a docked yacht. Leela kept the notice folded inside her palm like a burned paper. She walked deliberately because any sign of tremor would show the Villas guests and staff how fragile their arrangements were. She passed Zain's study door and hesitated. The study smelled of cedar and coffee grounds. Zain's leather chair sat empty, the desk arranged with his tidy stacks of files. When she walked in, he was already there, standing behind the desk with a thin amendment unfolded between his fingers. Zain did not look surprised to see the sealed notice on the console. He set the amendment down and pushed it toward Leela with a controlled motion. This changes our agreement, he said, his voice low. Leela read the paragraph publicity clause, conditional protection, obligations that required her to attend certain appearances and accept statements designed for the press. The clause demanded appearances that would humiliate her, placing her debts under the watch of cameras. Her mouth went dry. You can force me to be part of a show, she said. Zain's expression stayed still. I am offering you protection that circumvents the auction, Leela. The clause forces disclosure in controlled circumstances. It limits media leaks if you complete. Amira cut in from the doorway. Zain, we cannot sign away Leela's privacy as the price for safety. Zain looked at Amira, then at Leila. Amira, I am protecting assets and reputation. There is risk in secrecy. Publicity gives me room to act. I will not let this company replace our control with chaos. Rashid cleared his throat. If the public is told she embezzled, the board could force actions against key holdings. I recommend immediate containment and counter-evidence. The three of them formed a triangle. Legal logic, security precaution, and Leila's thin, private fear. Leela's fear slid into suspicion. She thought of the number on the notice, the stamp, and the courier's careful hands. If this is engineered, who benefits? She asked. Zain met her eyes and said his name. Someone on my board has the means and motive. We will find the trail. Amira already had her tablet open, fingers searching. We may be looking at a manufactured claim, she said. I will trace the routing now and get Rashid access to the server logs. Leela, stay close. Do not go to the marina alone. Leela gave a short nod and kept the notice folded into her palm like a second, smaller contract. Amira and Rashid moved through the Villas networks, and Leila watched them work with the same tight, efficient attention she used for her sister as bills. She stood at the window and watched the marina's yachts and the staff moving like figures in a painting. Her heartbeat slowed to a hollow, listening rhythm, and suspicion sharpened toward a target. Someone inside Zain's orbit. The discovery of shell companies was the first tangible turn. Amira tapped a link and said, Look, this set of accounts points to a holding company tied to Farid al-Khatib. He sits on Zain's board and he chairs the energy oversight. Leela felt her stomach drop. Farid, she asked. The name landed like an accusation. Zain's jaw tightened. Farid has been at odds with my strategy for months. He said he resists consolidation. For him, creating a scandal that forces a public scramble could push a vote my way. Rashid's voice came in the room. I pulled footage from the marina. 2 men in dark jackets were watching from a boat this morning. They were NT Marina staff. Leela's breath caught. The fear that had been professional tact now slid toward danger with teeth. She turned to Amira. If Farid can fake documents and plant men, he can ruin my life quickly. Amira tapped the tablet and made a call to an outside firm she trusted. We get the real records up on a secure server and file emergency injunctions. We also need proof that pins this on Farid's shell. An hour later, Rashid interrupted a lunch that tasted like nothing. He lowered the volley of news with a concrete action. We intercepted a masked man planting a USP and a note at the villa gate at 8:42 this morning. Security detained him. He's been questioned. Lila walked to the gate with Rashid and looked at the curb where the man had been stopped. The note mentioned Leila's sister by name and used a detail only someone who had been watching the family would know. Leila's voice was small when she asked, "How did they know Leila's school schedule?" "Rashid, they have surveillance or an informant." "This is now personal." Leila's hands trembled enough to crumple the edge of the notice in her pocket. That evening, Amira inserted the USP into a secure laptop in the study while Zain leaned against the doorframe. The laptop screen filled with files and altered bank transfers, but then Amira found edited photos and a falsified document that placed funds under Leila's control. She scrolled and said, "These files are manufactured to frame Leila for embezzlement. Look at the timestamps, edited after the transfers allegedly occurred." Zain watched the flicker of images and kept his voice measured. "This is meant to force a public collapse. If the board sees this, they'll consider a quick removal or a forced apology." Leila's breathing shortened. Her fear now sat in her throat. She walked to the window and pressed her palm against the glass until the skin cooled. Amira shut the laptop carefully. "We have options," she said. "We can fight this quietly with forensics. Or we can stage a controlled disclosure that undermines their narrative, expose the shell. But a public fight risks the board's backlash and the tabloids' hunger." Zain's expression did not change, but his fingers rubbed the signet ring at his thumb and forefinger. "I will not let them take Leila's name to justify their power play. We will prepare a defensive statement and delay any auction. Rashid, double the perimeter at night. Amira, get the full chain of custody on the USP and contact the firm in Geneva." Leila's voice was flat when she asked, "Will it work?" Zain's reply was a thin, guarded promise it will slow them. "But it will not stop the spectacle if they want it." She felt the sentence land like a condition she could not control. News flew faster than they planned. An island gala for a philanthropic fund became the stage. Zain insisted on moving the event to the pavilion precisely because he could regulate the guest list and the press pass system. Leila dressed in muted teal and ivory as Amira coached her through a scripted statement. Leila's clothes read modest and refined. They were a deliberate choice to counter tabloids' attempts to paint her as opportunistic. She wore the thin gold chain and the pearl studs. She kept her hair pinned at the nape. At the entrance, Rashid ran security checks and confirmed credentials. The villa staff systemically scanned every bag. The gala began with a ribbon, cutting and speeches. Guests clinked glasses under the warm teal and gold rim light that Zain's team had demanded to control the visuals. Leila stood near the edge of the crowd with Amira and listened to platitudes about charity. She felt the buzz of the room like a low current. Halfway through the second speech, Rashid's face went still and he mouthed, "Live feed." A tabloid had gone live with an edited dossier accusing Leila of fraud, and a flurry of notifications arrived on guests' phones. Photographers pivoted toward her. She saw cameras tilt and swivel and a specific, ugly angle emerge, a caption implying she had siphoned funds. Chaos accelerated. A camera crew moved toward Leila and shouted for comment. Someone in the press shouted, "Ms. Al-Said respond to allegations of embezzlement." Leila felt the room condense around the sound. She heard Zain step in behind her and say, "No comment. Give her space." Zain placed his hand lightly at the small of her back and steered her behind the decorative screen. His proximity was a public barrier and a private assertion. Leila felt his breath against the top of her head, and then his voice in the press crush. "This is a manufactured attack. We will not let falsehoods drive actions here." He faced the cameras with a posture that forced attention away from her. Zain's defense shocked the board members gathered at the gala. A quiet ripple of conversation spread through the guests. Leela watched his jaw, the minutes set at the corner of his mouth, the way his hand stayed near her, and felt something shift in the room and in herself. A photographer pushed forward and shoved a microphone under Zaina's nose, asking, "Mr. Al-Mansouri, are you defending this woman publicly?" Zaina's answer cut, "Yes. I will expose whoever is behind this." A member of the board, Farid Al-Khatib, leaned forward with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He snapped, "Mr. Al-Mansouri, you are risking corporate stability to protect a private contractor." Zain's expression did not change, but the board sensed an unplanned fracture. The live stream spread images of the dossier and a malicious voiceover repeating the edited accusations. Leela's chest tightened and she almost retched. Amira stepped beside her and said, "Lila, when I say your name, repeat. I deny these allegations and welcome forensic review." Leela repeated the line aloud the way one repeats a safety phrase. They both moved through the crowd together toward Zain's private conference area. On the way, a guest whispered, "If those files are true, the company will be forced to act." Leila heard the word forced and imagined letters arriving that would end her family's home. Her fear sharpened into anger. "They will not take my sisters home," she said, the words brittle with resolve. Inside the conference room, Zain closed the door and set the table. He tapped his watch and said, "Amira, release the server trace now. Rashid, lock the feeds to our legal team. Leila, stay with me and speak only when I ask." The room filled with a mechanical, efficient tension as the team moved like trained surgeons. Amira read aloud the chain of custody reports and pointed to the altered timestamps. "This is a falsified dossier created from inside their network, not an independent leak," she said. Zain's hand found the remote and called security. "We have evidence linking the shell companies to Farid's associate network. We prepare to expose them after we validate forensics." Leila listened to names and times and felt small details connect. The marina watchers, the planted USP, the boardroom fracture. She found her voice and said, "If they want a spectacle, we will make it truth against their lies." Her statement landed like a stake. Outside the conference room, the press waited like an animal. Zain knew exposure would bring collateral damage and made a choice. He would step forward and publicly declare his defense. The moment turned into the chapter's peak. At the waterfront stage, cameras zoomed in and a podium was set under the villa's rim light. Zain came forward with Leela at his side. He did not read a prepared apology. Instead he said, "This file is falsified. We have traced the network to shell companies linked to a member of my board. We will publish the forensic report." Farid rose and demanded proof. The two men traded short, sharp lines, and their conversation became argument. "You will not do this publicly." "Farid, I will," Zain replied. "You will destroy our stock value. You tried to manufacture a scandal. I will not let you profit from lies. This is reckless." Farid hissed, "You made it personal. You will answer for it." The exchange lasted only minutes, but felt violent. The crowd held its breath. Leila stood near Zain and watched Farid's face tighten and then flush. Photographers clicked. Board members whispered into phones. The gala shifted from celebration to tribunal. After the confrontation, the villa's rooms emptied slowly. Board members left in small clusters, their alliances rearranging. Zain retreated into private strategy while Rashid and Amira compiled the legal steps to freeze claims. Leela sat on the terrace steps and pulled the notice from her pocket to look at the official stamp again, as if reading it could wear the threat away. Her fear eased into a wary resolve and then into exhaustion. Amira sat beside her and said, "We will file emergency injunctions. The shell companies can be pierced, but it will take time and a public defense will give them openings." Leela nodded and said, "Time is what I dThe have. 48 hours is what they demand." Amira reached for Lila's hand and squeezed it. That night, the study became a war room. Files lay spread on the desk in precise stacks. Zain walked the terrace and stared at the private sea while Leela went through the motions of legal forms with Amira. Rashid posted guards and made calls. The tension reduced into equipment and lists. Servers to contact, affidavits to obtain, technicians to fly in. Amira oriented Lila to the next steps in plain, exact language. We file an injunction now, and we submit the forensic report to the regulator. We also need witness statements about the planted USB. Rashid, seal the perimeter evidence chain. Each action felt like a cut into the larger lie. A new twist arrived when Amira traced one of the shell invoices back to an account used by a charitable trust that listed a trustee name familiar to Lila. The trustee had once been a benefactor near her family's old neighborhood. His connection was nominal but specific. Amira read the name aloud and then said, he donated to companies Farid uses as cover. This trust funnels money through a network linked to the board's voting caucus. Leela put her hand over her mouth. The discovery altered how she understood the earlier pressure. It was not random sabotage, but a targeted campaign to force outcomes at the highest corporate level. Her fear shifted into anger and then into a cold determination to make the truth visible. They moved forward with damage control. Amira filed the injunction and sent the forensic team the planted files for reverse tracing. Rashid secured the detained courier and opened an interrogation that produced a name. A fixer who admitted receiving orders from a legal consultancy connected to Farid. The chain tightened. Each new discovery forced a choice. Go quiet and risk the public lie, or go public and risk corporate fallout. Zain made the decision to go public but insisted on a precise timeline to minimize collateral damage. He Layla if she was certain she wanted to proceed. She met his gaze and said, I done to have a choice. If this goes on, Layla's home will be sold. He nodded once and began to arrange the evidence release. Dawn arrived with a flat band of pewter. Layla stood on the terrace with Amira and Zain watching the horizon. The immediate legal emergency had been contained enough to buy them hours, but the board's next moves could come within minutes. Zain placed a thin amendment across the table. It allowed him to act on Leela's behalf publicly for a defined period, with limited disclosures to the press. Leela read the clause and felt the old, familiar tug of surrender. She remembered the pen splitting the last time she signed, and the cold in his study when he said, sign here. She let the memory settle and then picked up the pen. She signed the limited pact carefully, watching the ink settle on the paper. The act felt like paying a debt in a different currency. Public surrender for legal muscle. Amira closed the folder and said, this gives us legal standing to freeze the auction and to pursue the forensic lead more aggressively. Rashid adjusted his radio and said, I will prepare the evidence chain for the prosecutor. Zain took the signed amendment and refolded it, then slid it back across the table. He looked at Leela with an expression that no longer belonged to the man who had handed her terms in a study. Something softer hovered under his controlled posture. We will move quickly, he said simply. Leela put the pen down with a small, deliberate motion and kept her fingers curled around the pen's cap. The sunrise warmed the terrace until the gold met the teal of the sea. She felt resolve settle in her limbs the way a weight could ground a body. The chapter closed with action. The limited public pact was signed, the forensic trail pointed toward Farid's network, and the legal injunctions had been filed. Outside, a security vehicle signaled as it left the gate. Inside, the Villa's staff moved back into ordered tasks. Leela stepped away from the table and toward the villa door. As she reached for the handle, her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. She stopped and looked at the screen. The message read only, watch the noon feed. Leela found the envelope on the terrace, scorched along one edge, the paper brittle where heat had eaten the ink. Suspicion tightened her throat and pushed her hands to work without trembling. She peeled the blackened flap back and revealed a torn page from the contract and a photograph of her sister half, burned at one corner. Outside, the pool reflected a pale pre-dawn sky. Inside the villa, the security panel flashed an alert, the gate icon blinking red on a small screen. She called Amira while still standing at the railing. Amira, someone burned something on the terrace. Layla's voice was short. She held the photo up to the light. It snore. Amira answered on the second ring, quick and businesslike. Stay where you are. Don't touch anything else. Lock the terrace door. Leela obeyed. She crossed the tiled floor, the sandals slipping once, and closed the glass door with a sharp, metallic click. Suspicion shifted into urgency. She moved to the study before Amira finished her sentence. Do not, Amira. But Leela was already at the marble table where she had signed weeks earlier. She laid the signed page down and watched a thin curl of ash fall onto the polished surface. The first concrete problem was clear within minutes. Someone had removed a clause from the contract, a paragraph cut and darkened, and the photograph of Noor had been deliberately targeted. That made the act personal. That made it a message. Amira arrived 20 minutes later in a structured blazer and a face set to work. She carried a small black device and a file folder. You didn't touch anything else. Amira, no, Layla. Her hands were raw from holding the paper. Good. Let me scan it. Amira placed the torn page on a flatbed scanner and opened the file folder. This is tampering. Amira's lips thinned. Someone wants you to sign under threat, or to think you were threatened. The villa's security chief, Rashid, answered Zain's call as he stepped into the foyer. Zain had been on his way back from an early meeting. His phone buzzed with an image and the single word terrace. He set the phone down, inhaled, and pushed every door shut with the brisk authority that erased small objections. He found Leela at the study table and did not pause to remove his blazer. Stay here, Zain. His voice had the same controlled warmth that gave orders without volume. He placed a hand by the stack of papers and drew a small circle of distance with his other hand, a gesture that said nothing yet told everyone to step back. Rashid locked down. No one leaves. He did not raise his voice. Rashid moved immediately. Leela watched him, the tremor in her fingers returning when she realized he had noticed the missing clause before she had. Zain lifted the torn page between two fingers and the scar near his cheekbone looked like a careful measurement in low light. The clause was redacted, not burned at random. Zain, someone copied our document, took the protective language and removed a line about liability. They want leverage. He set the page down and looked at her. Who recently handled your family paperwork? His question was practical. His eyes searched her face for something else. Fear, defiance, a clue. Leela listed names. She named the courier who had handed her the envelope in the previous chapter, the agency that tracked incoming mail, the notary who had notarized the signatures. She each name in full. Zain repeated a name, checking a micro expression. Amira, run those names against access logs. Rashid, pull camera footage from the terrace and the service gates for the last 48 hours. Lock all physical deliveries until we clear them. He spoke like a man reassembling a plan brick by brick. Amira did as ordered, but within an hour she came back with a small red frown between her brows. The timestamp on the security footage was altered, she said. Someone shifted the recorded time by an hour and a half. The footage shows a blurred figure moving along the dune road. The gate could be a woman or a man. It's indistinct. The delivery manifest shows a signature from a courier team linked to Al Mansouri Enterprises. The name landed on Leela like a slapped palm. She moved backward as if someone had stepped into her path. Al Mansouri, she asked. Zain's jaw tightened. He rubbed his thumb against the thin signet ring on his hand for a second, out of habit. Inside access does not equal guilt, he said. But it narrows who could have been inside the perimeter and left a planted message. We won't assume anything yet. His tone tried to split restraint from suspicion. Leela felt anger rise tight in her chest. Anger replaced suspicion for a moment. She had watched bills pile and a legal notice threaten her family. She had signed the contract under pressure. Now somebody close enough to Zain's circle had sent a warning with her sister's photo. That felt like betrayal. Leela confronted Amira in the kitchen later that afternoon when the sun made tight squares on the floor. She had found a phone log on the courier's manifest that listed an encrypted exchange with Amira, a number the day before the recent delivery. Amira. Why does this show messages to your number? Leela. Her voice was steady, but each word hit like a stone. Amira's face closed for a breath, then opened with forced calm. I made a choice to buy time for you, she said quickly. I negotiated with a fixer. I sent messages I should dThe because the legal hold we filed wasn't moving fast enough. I didn't know someone would escalate to burning a photo. You lied to me, Leela. The words were a small, hard sound. You lied about the courier chain. She put the torn page down on the counter like a detonator. They argued in short, sharp exchanges, 3 back and forth lines that became 6, until Zayn arrived and the argument tightened into a tension. Amira. Explain everything now. Zayn's voice was calm, but the room pulled tight. Amira explained. She had texted a contact with instructions to delay the auction notice by 24 hours. She admitted sending a payment to a local fixer to stall the paperwork while she pushed other legal channels. I thought I could stop it without using anyone tied to Mir. All Mansouri's operations, she said. I was wrong. I asked for an edge and that created a link. Leela listened. Emotion shifted again, anger slid into isolation. She felt small and exposed in the villa's vast rooms, the marble and linen suddenly sharp. You kept me in the dark about who helped, Lila. You protected me by lying to me. That isn't protection. She folded her hands, the habitual motion when panic pressed at her sternum. Amira stepped forward. Leila, I did it to keep Noor's auction from happening before we had time to appeal. I thought I could contain the risk. I am sorry. Her eyes were steady. She tapped her pen against the tablet case. I thought I could fix this and keep you safe. I miscalculated who had access. Her apology was concrete, not theatrical. A new external event arrived then. A private investigator Amira had hired stepped into the drawing room with a stack of prints and a small plastic envelope. He set the photos down in a fan. I followed the dune road yesterday, he said. This is what I found. The photos showed a figure, hood up, standing on a road that ran along the dunes, watching the villa. One photograph included a delivery manifest with a familiar signature. Leela took the photos and leaned in. She recognized the curvature of the signature. It wasn't the courier company at random. The hand matched someone who had near, regular corporate access. Who's that name tied to? She asked. The investigator named an operations manager who reported to Zayn's logistics office. The name landed like another blow. Zayn's face went closed. He inhaled and asked for the manifest, the delivery manifest. He scanned the names and called the operations manager's office. The manager's assistant answered and supplied an alibi for the time, an internal meeting logged on the system. But the camera on the meeting room had a blind spot during that 30-minute window. A small twist arrived that afternoon. The security footage they had initially reviewed showed an anomaly when they ran it through a frame-by-frame analysis. The intruder's gait matched someone who walked with a slight limp on the left leg. Leela remembered an old deliveryman from a market in her neighborhood who limped the same way. She named him. The man who delivered the sealed notice to my mother had a limp on the left, she said. Zayn's expression did not shift. Instead, he asked Leela specific questions about the courier. Did you sign anything to receive the letter? He asked, did the man say his name? Each question was an attempt to anchor facts. Leela answered. She had only the courier's first name and the memory of the limp. That doesn't prove anything yet, Zayn, but it broadens the net. We need to be surgical, not reactive. He pressed his thumb into the ring on his hand again. The day wore on with a rhythm of discovery and concession. Rashid found tampering in the gate access logs, an overridden entry from a maintenance shift the night before. Amira pulled a legal copy of the original contract and compared it with the torn page. She found handwriting in the margin, small, Rushed letters that suggested coercion had been appended to the contract after the fact. The handwriting carried a shortened Lila recognized from a creditor as threatening notes she had been tracking. That was another twist. The campaign against Lila involved both corporate channels and local enforcers. By late afternoon, tension had built toward the night's peak. Lila walked the villa corridors and checked the lock on North's room. She counted breaths and paced in short steps. Emotion shifted again. Rational planning began to harden into fear. The fear had texture, a hollow pull in the stomach, palms damp against fabric. She wanted to see the footage again. At dusk, the intruder struck. Leela heard a muffled thump in the guest wing corridor while she was stepping into the bedroom to check the balcony latch. A sound like a loose shutter. She lifted her head and listened. The villa swallowed the noise and then gave it back in a second, closer. Zane's voice cut across the corridor. Leela, door. He ran. The next seconds were motion and collision. He reached the guest wing and met a shadow at the corner. The man moved with quick, practiced violence. Zane collided with him and the two grappled. Leather and linen slapped. The intruder pulled a small blade and Zane's hand closed around his wrist. The blade skittered across tile. Layla stood in the bedroom doorway watching. She had never seen Zane move like that, raw, immediate. He shoved the intruder into a wall, and the man's fingers fumbled with a branded token that fell and skidded across the floor. Leela saw the token and the letters on it, an emblem from a trading faction tied to deals Zane had once made. The token changed the shape of the scene. It was a physical object that connected the attack to Zane's past arrangements. Who sent you? Zane demanded, winded. The intruder coughed and looked at him with blood in the corner of his mouth. He spat a name, and the syllable slid out like a thrown stone. Leela did not expect the word that followed. It was a name she had heard in passing during legal documents connected to a creditor's network. Rashid tackled the intruder as Layla ran across the corridor and shut the door behind her. Police arrived 30 minutes later and took statements. The attacker had evidence on him. A delivery manifest, a small satchel with payment receipts, and text records pointing back to a courier cell that had been subcontracted through an operations assistant tied nominally to Zane's corporate structure. The officers moved briskly. Their presence made the villa feel both smaller and safer. In the study that night, after the police left and the villa settled into a guarded quiet, Zane closed the single remaining gap between them. A small object placed flat on the table and a new document with crisp lines. He slid an amended clause toward Layla and a plain, unadorned ring box beside it. I will formally change the contract to remove your named liabilities. Zane, I'll assume the legal responsibility the redacted clause was supposed to protect you from. But I need you to sign the amendment. His voice was steady. He did not reach for the ring. Layla stared at the amendment. The legal text used exact phrases. Amira had drafted it to remove the coercive language and to insert protective indemnities. It meant safety in practical terms. Frozen auction notices, an escrow fund under court seal, personal oversight from Zane's legal team. It also meant deeper entanglement, an official documented link between her and Zane's family name. She touched the ring box as if to steady herself. Inside there was a small token. Not extravagant, a simple band of brushed gold. There was no grand flourish, no ceremony. The gesture was private. The ring represented something quieter than romance. It represented a willingness to stake something personal on the contract, cemented terms. Leela spoke, if I sign, what stops this from happening again? Her words were precise. What stops a new courier from being hired? She named the risk in the specific terms she feared. Zane answered with clear, practical measures, new security protocols, full background checks on all staff, a sealed courier chain for any personal documents. Rashid will report directly to Amira for any incoming packages. I will sign personal liability on the amendment. He listed actions like items on a checklist. Each promise was concrete. Amira leaned forward. I will put patrols on the perimeter and push the appeal in court first thing tomorrow. I will subpoena the courier sales records and get a freeze on associated accounts. She tapped the tablet and sent an immediate legal notice. Leela felt the emotion shift one more time, from controlled fear into a cautious, practical relief edged with the weight of choice. Relief did not quiet the questions. She considered Nora's face in the singed photograph and the smell of ash that still clung faintly to the torn page on the table. She thought of Amira's compromise and the private investigator's photos and of Zane's measured decisions. She also thought of the earlier moments from the contract signing night, the crooked pen and the exact equation of fear and resolve that had made her press her name. She remembered the courier pushing the envelope into her hands weeks ago. She remembered the way the legal notice had landed on her mother's kitchen table. Those facts had not changed. What changed now was that the villa's storm had forced the disagreement into light. Leela read the amendment line by line. Outside, a desert wind moved a strip of canvas on a service tent. The sound was a small, regular scrape. She signed. Her pen was steady. She did not put her name down as if surrendering. She placed it with attention as if marking a map. The action resolved the chapter's immediate legal peril. Zane slid the ring box toward her again. This one tea make you mine, he said quietly. It creates a clear obligation, so no one else can twist the contract against you. Take it if you want to accept that responsibility with me. If you done tea, the amendment still stands. I'll sign either way. His words were short, removing theatrical pressure. Leila closed the box with her thumb on the lid. She felt the weight of the gold against the paper, the realness of decision pressing into her palm. She opened the box, touched the ring with her forefinger, and put it back. She did not say yes or no in flaring terms. Instead, she placed the box beside the amendment and slid both back toward Zane. I accept the amendment, she said. I'll sign it and move forward with the protections. I need Noor safe. She stopped, choosing the right word. I need a guarantee in writing, and I need you to follow through on the security measures. Her voice was focused and direct. Zane nodded and signed beneath her name, sealing his personal liability. He did not slip the ring onto her finger. He folded his hands on the table and looked at her with something like tired attention. I'll keep my signature on these papers, he said. That's my guarantee. He tapped the ring box once with a fingertip, then closed his hand. Outside the villa, a patrol car rolled past the gated entrance. Inside, a calmer order took shape. Logs of deliveries, new checks on permissions, daily briefings between Rashid and Amira. The intruder had been arrested and taken away. His statements began to unravel a subcontracting chain that implicated a rogue assistant in Zane's operations. That assistant would be interviewed the next morning. The chapter closed with light on the table and the physical objects that now bound them. The amended contract with signatures, the ring box that remained closed, the torn page folded into an evidence envelope. Leila stood, put her hand on the study-s polished wood, and pushed the envelope toward the center of the table. Tomorrow, she said, looking at Zane and Amira in turn. We go to court and freeze everything connected to the manifest. We call the bank and put a hold. We find out who in his circle cleared that delivery. We will not let Noor's home be auctioned while I breathe. This is the list. We follow it. Her words were action, not vow. She named the steps she expected. Zane's hand rose and covered the amendment for a moment. Agreed, he said. I will be present at every hearing. His answer was precise. Amira tapped the tablet and scheduled the filings for first light. The plan moved from idea to calendar item. Leela folded her hands once and let out a measured breath. The ash on the torn photograph still smelled faintly of smoke. She slid the sealed evidence envelope into a locked drawer. Then she reached for the ring box one last time and closed it with the edge of her palm. The final image was concrete. A small gold band sitting in a dark box on a marble table under a reading lamp, a legal amendment with 2 signatures beside it. and the house made safer by human rules and named actions. The villa hummed with the quiet of people doing what needed to be done. Zane signed one more line, and the room settled into a practical, watchful silence. Someone at the gate radioed in a late update. The operations assistant's travel records showed an unexplained taxi at the time of the tampering. The assistant would be questioned in the morning. Leela closed the drawer with the evidence and stood in the study doorway while Zane gathered his papers. She did not slip the ring onto her finger. She had made a legal choice and set new boundaries. It was a beginning defined by paperwork and a small band of gold, not by promises of feeling. She felt tired and alert, and the fear that had guided her into action earlier that day had loosened into a focused resolve. Outside, the desert was wide and unchanged. Inside, the concrete steps they had taken, the amendment, the security plan, the arrest, had rearranged the immediate threat into a manageable set of tasks. Leela watched Zane place the amendment in a sealed envelope and saw the care with which he handled the paper. He looked at her once and said, "Rest. We'll handle the rest together." She nodded once. Then she closed the study door behind her and kept the evidence drawer locked. The last sound before the chapter ended was the soft click of the lock and the steady tapping of rain on the service tent that had started in the night. Small and regular, like a new list being checked off.